What if the lines that divide nations were more than just ink on a map? What if they shimmered, transparent, visible yet intangible, holding stories of passage and division, of whispers and shouts across their ethereal plains? What secrets would they reveal if we could truly see them? Tonight we won't be chasing those secrets. Instead, we will find our peace in the slow, deliberate act of surveying, the meticulous process of mapping, the careful drawing of those lines that define territories, borders, and ultimately the very idea of belonging. We'll explore the mundane, the methodical, the almost hypnotic rhythm of creating boundaries, from the grand scale of nations to the intimate confines of a backyard fence. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Snooze Stories for more calming content designed to help you drift off to sleep. Now, dim the lights. Let's begin with a single point on a blank page, a place of potential, a starting point for a journey that will define not just space, but the very flow of human lives. From this point, a line extends, tentative at first, then growing bolder, representing a decision, a declaration, a division, a border. And tonight, on Snooze Stories, we'll trace those lines, explore their meanings, and perhaps find rest in their quiet, unwavering presence. He's border. And tonight, on Snooze Stories, we'll trace those lines, explore their meanings, and perhaps find rest in their quiet, unwavering presence. Imagine, if you will, the world before maps, before fences, before the very concept of ownership. A world where the land stretched out, vast and unbroken, under a sky brimming with unfamiliar constellations. Close your eyes and feel the cool earth beneath your bare feet, the wind whispering through tall grasses, the scent of wild herbs carried on the breeze. In this world, there were no fixed points, only the rhythm of the seasons, the migratory paths of animals, the slow, steady pulse of nature itself. But even in this seemingly boundless expanse, the seeds of division were being sown, not by lines on parchment, but by the subtle shifts in the landscape, the clustering of resources, the instinctive need for shelter and security. A grove of fruit trees, a spring bubbling from the earth, a cave offering protection from the elements. These became the first focal points, drawing small groups of humans together, creating the earliest forms of community. Think of a tribe of hunter-gatherers, their territory defined not by walls or treaties, but by the familiar contours of the land. A winding river might mark one boundary, a range of hills another. These weren't hard lines, but zones of gradual transition, where one tribe's hunting grounds might overlap with another's. Disputes were likely settled not by war, but by ritual, by negotiation, by the unspoken understanding of shared resources and mutual respect. As these early communities grew, so too did their need to define and protect their resources. The first deliberate markings appeared: a pile of stones, a line of blazed trees, a shallow ditch dug in the earth. These weren't grand fortifications, but simple, practical measures, designed to signal a boundary, to deter trespassers, to establish a sense of belonging. Picture the slow, deliberate act of placing one stone upon another, feeling the weight of each rock, the rough texture against your skin. Imagine the repetitive motion of digging a shallow trench, the rhythmic scrape of a digging stick against the earth, the gradual emergence of a visible line in the soil. These were acts of definition, of creation, of slowly bringing order to a chaotic world. With the advent of agriculture and settled life, the need for more permanent boundaries became increasingly apparent. The first villages emerged, clusters of huts surrounded by fields of cultivated crops. These settlements, vulnerable to raids and theft, required more substantial protection. And so the first walls began to rise. Imagine the collective effort required to build these early fortifications, the hauling of stones, the weaving of branches, the gradual emergence of a protective barrier. These weren't the imposing ramparts of later empires, but simple structures, built with readily available materials designed to offer a measure of security. They were a testament to human ingenuity, to the growing need for protection, to the evolving concept of territory. The earliest walled cities, like Jericho in the ancient Near East, were more than just fortified settlements. They were centers of trade, of religion, of cultural exchange. The walls, while providing protection, also served as symbolic markers, defining the limits of the city, separating the urban from the rural, the civilized from the wild. Close your eyes and imagine standing within the walls of one of these early cities. Feel the cool shade of the narrow streets. Hear the murmur of voices, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the bleating of sheep in a nearby pen. The walls, while enclosing you, also offer a sense of security, a feeling of belonging, a shared identity. As civilizations developed, so too did the complexity of their borders. The Egyptians, with their vast empire stretching along the Nile, used natural features like deserts and mountains to define their frontiers. The Romans, masters of engineering, built elaborate fortifications like Hadrian's Wall in Britain to mark the limits of their vast dominion. These weren't just lines on a map, but physical structures designed to control movement, to regulate trade, to impose order on conquered territories. Think of the Roman legions, marching in perfect formation, their sandals raising dust clouds as they patrolled the frontier. Imagine the rhythmic clang of their armor, the steady beat of drums, the unwavering discipline of a vast military machine. These soldiers, stationed on the edges of the empire, were the living embodiment of Roman power, the guardians of the border, the enforcers of imperial will. As we drift further into the night, let the image of these early borders fade slowly from your mind. The piles of stones, the blazed trees, the first rudimentary walls, they are the ancestors of the complex geopolitical boundaries that define our modern world. They are a testament to the enduring human need for security, for belonging, for the creation of order in a world that often seems chaotic and unpredictable. And as you drift off to sleep, let the rhythmic repetition of these ancient acts, the placing of stones, the digging of trenches, the building of walls, lull you into a state of deep, restful slumber. The rhythmic repetition of these ancient acts, the placing of stones, the digging of trenches, the building of walls, lulled civilizations into a new era, an era of empires. Imagine the slow but inexorable expansion of these early kingdoms, driven by ambition, by the desire for resources, by the sheer force of human will. Picture the armies marching outwards, their banners fluttering in the wind, their footsteps echoing across the land, slowly extending the reach of imperial power. The concept of the border, once a simple line of demarcation, began to transform into something far more complex. Consider the vast Persian Empire, stretching from the Indus Valley to the Nile Delta. Its borders weren't simply lines on a map, but zones of contact, of interaction, of cultural exchange, often enforced by the king's eyes and ears, officials who ensured loyalty and control throughout the sprawling empire. Caravans laden with silks and spices traversed its roads, their camel bells chiming softly in the desert air, their rhythmic swaying a gentle lullaby. Imagine the vibrant marketplaces at the edges of the empire, the babble of different languages, the mingling of diverse cultures, the constant flow of goods and ideas. Feel the rough texture of a bolt of silk, the pungent aroma of exotic spices, the warm sun on your skin as you wandered through these bustling trading hubs. These borderlands were dynamic, fluid spaces where the empire's power was both projected and challenged. Further west, the Roman Empire, with its legions of disciplined soldiers and its intricate network of roads and fortifications, embraced a more rigid approach to border control. Picture the imposing stone ramparts of Hadrian's Wall, stretching across the northern frontier of Roman Britain. Imagine the cold wind whistling through the battlements, the rhythmic tramp of sentries pacing the wall, the distant glint of sunlight on Roman armor. These were not just defensive structures, but symbols of Roman power, designed to deter invaders and to impose order on conquered territories. The rhythmic placement of each stone, each brick, each layer of mortar solidified the Roman presence, marking a stark division between Roman order and the untamed lands beyond. These empires, while vastly different in their organization and culture, shared a common understanding of borders as instruments of power and control. They were not simply lines on a map, but actively managed zones, enforced by military might and administrative systems. Think of the Roman tax collectors, meticulously recording the flow of goods and people across the border, their pens scratching on papyrus scrolls, their voices a low murmur in the bustling customs houses. Imagine the Persian satraps, the governors of distant provinces, dispensing justice and collecting tribute, their words carrying the weight of imperial authority. These officials, stationed on the edges of the empire, were the living embodiment of imperial power, the guardians of the border, the enforcers of the emperor's will. The rise of these vast empires also led to the development of new forms of border management. The Romans, with their sophisticated legal system, developed complex rules and regulations, governing trade, migration, and citizenship. Imagine the scribes painstakingly copying legal texts, their quills scratching on parchment, the faint scent of ink filling the air. These written laws, codified and standardized, were a crucial tool for managing the empire's vast and diverse population. They defined who belonged and who did not, who could cross the border and who could not, creating a legal framework for the control of movement and interaction. In the East, the Chinese Empire, with its emphasis on centralized authority and cultural uniformity, developed sophisticated systems of border control, including the construction of the Great Wall. Picture the endless expanse of the Great Wall, snaking across mountains and valleys, a testament to human ingenuity and imperial ambition. Imagine the thousands of laborers who toiled for centuries to build this colossal structure, their hammers ringing against stone, their sweat mingling with the earth. The wall, while a physical barrier, also served as a powerful symbol of Chinese identity, separating the civilized world within from the barbarian hordes without. As these empires expanded, they encountered other cultures, other peoples, other ways of life. The borders became zones of both conflict and exchange, where different cultures clashed and mingled, where ideas and goods flowed across the lines of demarcation. Imagine the Silk Road, a network of trade routes connecting East and West, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and religions. Picture the caravans traversing vast deserts and towering mountains, their camels laden with silk, spices, and porcelain. Hear the murmur of different languages, the chanting of Buddhist monks, the rhythmic jingle of coins changing hands. These borderlands were vibrant, dynamic spaces, where cultures interacted, where new ideas were born, where the boundaries between civilizations blurred. The inspiration for ice was the city of Bog, an oil city of Serbia. As you drift further into the night, let the image of these imperial borders slowly fade from your mind. The bustling marketplaces, the imposing fortifications, the endless stretches of the Great Wall, they are all part of the long and complex history of borders. They represent the evolving human understanding of territory, of identity, of the relationship between power and control. And as you sink deeper into slumber, let the rhythmic repetition of these ancient activities, the marching of armies, the scratching of pens, the ringing of hammers, lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep. The ringing of hammers lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep. The rhythmic clang of hammer against stone, a sound echoing across centuries. The sound that speaks of human ambition, of imperial power, of the enduring human desire to mark and define territory. Focus now on those hammers, the rough, calloused hands that grip them, the sweat dripping from brows under the scorching sun. We are drawn to the monumental task of building walls, ramparts, physical manifestations of borders, etched not just onto maps, but onto the very landscape itself. Consider Hadrian's Wall, that formidable barrier snaking across the rugged terrain of northern Britain. Visualize the grayish-white stone quarried from the nearby hills, each block carefully shaped and fitted into place. Feel the rough texture of the stone beneath your fingertips, the cool, damp moss clinging to the northern face. Imagine the legions of Roman soldiers stationed along the wall, their leather sandals scuffing against the stone pathways, the metallic glint of their armor catching the pale sunlight. Hear the creak of the wooden gates, the clang of the iron bolts as they are drawn back, the low murmur of voices as patrols change. This wall, a testament to Roman engineering prowess, was more than just a defensive structure. It was a symbol of Roman power, a declaration of their dominion over this far-flung corner of the empire. Trace the line of the wall with your mind's eye, following its contours as it rises and falls with the undulating landscape. Picture the watchtowers, strategically placed along its length, providing panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. Imagine the sentries, their eyes constantly scanning the horizon, watching for any sign of movement, any hint of threat from the unconquered tribes beyond. The rhythmic pacing of the sentries, back and forth, a steady, monotonous rhythm, a lullaby of imperial control. Shift your focus now eastward, across continents and cultures, to the vast expanse of the Great Wall of China. This colossal structure, stretching for thousands of miles across mountains and deserts, is a testament to the enduring power of human endeavor. Imagine the sheer scale of the project, the millions of hands that contributed to its construction over centuries. Picture the laborers, toiling under the relentless sun, hauling massive stones, mixing mortar, laying brick upon brick, their rhythmic movements a silent symphony of human labor. Feel the rough texture of the sun-baked bricks, the gritty sand beneath your feet. Trace the line of the wall as it snakes across the landscape, disappearing into the hazy distance. Imagine the watchtowers rising from the wall like ancient sentinels, their tiled roofs shimmering in the sunlight. Hear the wind whistling through the battlements, carrying with it the whispers of history, the echoes of ancient battles, the murmur of countless lives touched by this imposing structure. The Great Wall, like Hadrian's Wall, was more than just a physical barrier. It was a symbol of Chinese identity, a demarcation between the civilized world within and the barbarian hordes without. It was a testament to the power of the Chinese Empire, its ability to mobilize vast resources and manpower to achieve a monumental feat of engineering. The wall, in its sheer immensity, evoked a sense of awe and wonder, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Consider the intricate details of these walls, the careful placement of each stone, each brick, each layer of mortar. Imagine the skilled artisans carving intricate designs into the stonework, adding their own personal touch to this grand imperial project. Picture the architects meticulously planning the layout of the wall, ensuring its strategic effectiveness. The construction of these walls was not just a feat of engineering, but also a creative endeavor, an expression of human artistry and skill. These walls, these ramparts, these physical manifestations of borders, served a multitude of purposes. They were defensive structures designed to protect against invaders. They were symbols of power, declarations of imperial authority. They were markers of identity, separating one culture from another. They were instruments of control, regulating the flow of people and goods across the border. As you drift further into the night, let the image of these walls slowly fade from your mind. The rhythmic clang of hammers, the tramp of soldiers' feet, the whisper of the wind through the battlements, these sounds, once so vibrant, now begin to recede, merging with the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The walls themselves, once so imposing, now soften and blur, dissolving into the darkness. Remember, these structures, while seemingly permanent, are ultimately transient. They are subject to the forces of time and nature, to the ebb and flow of human history. They rise and fall, they crumble and decay, they are rebuilt and reimagined. And as you sink deeper into slumber, let the image of these ancient walls, these enduring symbols of human endeavor, lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep. These ancient walls, these enduring symbols of human endeavor, now give way to another kind of boundary, one less tangible yet equally potent. Imagine a map spread out before you, not etched in stone or brick, but drawn on parchment, the delicate lines tracing not the contours of the land, but the contours of belief. Consider the spread of religions, how they flowed across continents like rivers, their waters sometimes nourishing, sometimes destructive. Imagine the soft glow of candlelight illuminating the pages of a sacred text, the hushed whispers of prayer echoing through a vaulted cathedral, the rhythmic chanting of monks in a remote monastery. These are the sounds of faith, the sounds that often accompanied the establishment of new frontiers, the redrawing of maps based not on geography, but on ideology. Focus now on the fervor of the Crusades, a series of religious wars spanning centuries. Picture the knights clad in shining armor, their swords gleaming in the sunlight, their banners emblazoned with the cross. Hear the clash of steel on steel, the cries of battle, the thunder of hooves as armies clashed on fields, far from their homes. The Crusades were driven by a powerful religious impulse, a desire to reclaim holy lands, to spread the word of God by the sword. Imagine the long and arduous journeys undertaken by these crusaders, across land and sea, driven by an unwavering faith. Visualize the diverse landscapes they traversed, the scorching deserts, the snow-capped mountains, the rolling hills of the Levant. Their journeys, fueled by religious zeal, blurred the existing borders, redrawing them in the name of faith. Shift your attention now to the Iberian Peninsula, the stage for the Reconquista, the centuries-long struggle between Christian kingdoms and the Muslim Moors. Imagine the sun-drenched landscapes of Spain, the Moorish palaces with their intricate tilework, the Christian cathedrals with their soaring spires. Hear the rhythmic strumming of a lute, the melodious call to prayer from a minaret, the solemn chanting of Gregorian chants in a monastery. These sounds, representing two distinct cultures and faiths, intertwined and clashed for centuries, reshaping the borders of the peninsula. Imagine the shifting lines of control, the ebb and flow of power as territories were won and lost, the constant redrawing of the map as the religious landscape changed. Consider now the spread of Islam, radiating outwards from the Arabian Peninsula, carried by armies, traders, and missionaries. Imagine the vast deserts of Arabia, the bustling marketplaces of Damascus, the opulent courts of Baghdad. Picture the caravans laden with spices and silks, the scholars poring over ancient texts, the artists creating intricate patterns and calligraphy. Hear the rhythmic chanting of the Quran, the call to prayer echoing across the rooftops, the lively discussions in the madrasas, the Islamic schools of learning. The spread of Islam was not simply a military conquest, but a cultural and intellectual revolution, redefining borders and forging new connections across vast distances. Imagine the construction of mosques, the establishment of new trade routes, the dissemination of new ideas and technologies. These were the building blocks of a new world order, a world shaped by faith and interconnectedness. As you delve deeper into this period of history, consider the complexities of religious borders. They were not simply lines on a map, but zones of interaction and exchange, places where cultures clashed and mingled, where ideas were debated and shared. Imagine the bustling port cities of the Mediterranean, where merchants from different faiths and backgrounds traded goods and stories. Picture the scholars and theologians engaging in lively debates, challenging each other's beliefs and seeking common ground. These interactions, while sometimes fraught with tension, also contributed to a rich tapestry of cultural exchange. Now let your mind wander to the intricate patterns found in Islamic art, the geometric designs, the arabesques, the calligraphy. Imagine tracing these patterns with your fingertips, feeling the smooth surface of the tile, the delicate strokes of the ink on parchment. These artistic expressions, deeply rooted in faith, transcended geographical boundaries, influencing artistic traditions across the world. Visualize the stained glass windows of a Gothic cathedral, the vibrant colors, the biblical scenes depicted in intricate detail. These works of art, inspired by Christian faith, served as powerful visual narratives, conveying complex theological concepts to a largely illiterate population. Focus on the sound of a single bell tolling in a monastery, a slow, deliberate rhythm, a call to prayer, a reminder of the passage of time. This simple sound, echoing across the valley, marked the boundaries of the monastic community, separating it from the secular world outside. Imagine the monks within the monastery walls, their lives structured by prayer and contemplation, their days measured by the ringing of the bell. This sonic boundary, while invisible, was just as real as any physical wall. Consider the construction of a cathedral, a monumental undertaking, a testament to the power of faith. Picture the architects, the masons, the carpenters, the stained glass artists, all working together, their skills and talents united by a shared religious vision. The cathedral, once completed, became a focal point for the community, a symbol of faith, a beacon of hope. Its towering spires, reaching towards the heavens, mark the presence of the sacred within the landscape. As you drift further into relaxation, let the images of these religious conflicts and cultural exchanges slowly fade, replaced by a sense of tranquility and peace. The clash of swords, the chanting of prayers, the bustling marketplaces, these sounds now recede into the background, merging with the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The borders once so sharply defined now soften and blur, dissolving into the darkness. Remember, these boundaries, while seemingly immutable, are ultimately fluid. They are subject to the forces of history, to the ebb and flow of human belief. They are constantly being redrawn, reinterpreted, redefined. And as you sink deeper into slumber, let the echoes of these ancient faiths, these enduring expressions of human spirituality, lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep. And as the world slumbered, a new age dawned, an age of exploration, of discovery, of expanding horizons. Imagine the creaking of wooden ships, the salty spray of the ocean, the cries of gulls overhead. Feel the gentle rocking of the waves, the vast expanse of the open sea stretching out before you, an invitation to explore the unknown. The world once perceived as flat and finite began to reveal its spherical shape, its vastness, its hidden continents and uncharted waters. This new understanding, this expansion of geographical knowledge, would profoundly impact the very concept of borders, redrawing the lines on the map in ways never before imagined. Picture the flickering candlelight in the cabin of a ship, illuminating the charts and maps spread out on the table. Trace your finger along the lines, the tentative outlines of coastlines, the dotted lines marking unexplored territories. These maps, imperfect as they were, represented the burgeoning knowledge of the world, the gradual unveiling of its secrets. Hear the scratching of a quill pen as cartographers meticulously recorded their findings, translating the vastness of the ocean onto the confines of parchment. Each new discovery, each new charting of a coastline, contributed to a shifting perception of the world, a redefinition of its boundaries. Consider the implications of the astrolabe, this ingenious instrument used by sailors to navigate by the stars. Imagine holding it in your hand, feeling its weight, the coolness of the metal. See the intricate markings, the celestial sphere represented in miniature. This instrument, a symbol of human ingenuity, enabled explorers to venture further into the unknown, to cross vast oceans, to connect distant lands. The astrolabe, in essence, was a key that unlocked new worlds, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and redrawing the map of the world. Now, focus on the Treaty of Tordesillas, signed in 1494. Imagine the hushed whispers in the room, the rustling of parchment, the scratching of quill pens as representatives of Spain and Portugal divided the newly discovered lands between them. This treaty, drawn up with the blessing of the Pope, drew an imaginary line down the Atlantic Ocean, effectively partitioning the world into two spheres of influence. Consider the audacity of this act, the drawing of arbitrary lines across vast, unexplored territories, claiming ownership of lands and peoples yet unknown. This act of cartographic imperialism would have profound and lasting consequences, shaping the future of colonialism, the destinies of entire nations, the very contours of the world map. Imagine the impact of this treaty on the indigenous populations of these newly discovered lands. Their world, their ancestral territories, were suddenly divided by lines drawn by distant powers, lines that held no meaning for them, lines that disregarded their existing boundaries and their own understanding of the world. The Treaty of Tordesillas, while seemingly a simple agreement between two European powers, represents a pivotal moment in the history of borders. It marks the shift from borders defined by natural features and cultural interactions to borders imposed by external forces, driven by ambition and the pursuit of power. Focus on the sound of waves crashing against the shore, a constant, rhythmic pulse, a reminder of the vastness of the ocean, the interconnectedness of the world. This same ocean, once a barrier, now became a highway for exploration, for conquest, for trade. The age of exploration, while driven by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, also unleashed forces of exploitation and domination, reshaping the world in profound and often devastating ways. Consider the spice trade, The allure of exotic goods from distant lands, the driving force behind many of these voyages of discovery. Imagine the pungent aroma of cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, filling the air of a bustling port city. These spices, highly prized in Europe, became symbols of wealth and status, fueling the desire for new trade routes, for access to the sources of these precious commodities. The pursuit of spices, seemingly innocuous, would drive the creation of vast empires, the displacement of indigenous populations, the redrawing of borders across continents. Picture the bustling marketplaces of Lisbon, Seville, Amsterdam, filled with exotic goods from distant lands. Hear the clamor of voices, the bartering of merchants, the clinking of coins. These bustling centers of trade became hubs of global exchange, connecting different parts of the world, blurring traditional boundaries. The flow of goods, however, was often accompanied by the flow of people, the forced migration of enslaved Africans, the displacement of indigenous communities, creating new and often tragic forms of borders defined by exploitation and inequality. As you drift further into relaxation, let the images of these bustling ports, these exotic spices, these newly drawn maps slowly fade, replaced by a sense of calm and tranquility. The creaking of ships, the crashing of waves, the clamor of marketplaces, these sounds now recede into the background, merging with the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The lines on the map, once so sharply defined, now soften and blur, dissolving into the darkness. Remember, these boundaries, while seemingly fixed and immutable, are ultimately fluid, subject to the forces of history, to the ebb and flow of human ambition. They are constantly being redrawn, reinterpreted, redefined, and as you sink deeper into slumber, let the echoes of these voyages of discovery, these explorations of the unknown, lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep, the ebb and flow of human ambition. Imagine now the slow rise of a new kind of map, not one charting physical territories, but one charting the rise of something intangible, something potent, the nation. This new map isn't etched on parchment or drawn with quill and ink, but etched in the hearts and minds of people, drawn with shared language, shared customs, shared stories whispered around flickering hearth fires. Feel the warmth of that fire, the crackle of the flames, the comforting scent of wood smoke. This burgeoning sense of belonging, of shared identity, coalesced around the idea of a nation. It wasn't just the land anymore, the mountains and rivers, the valleys and plains, but the people who lived there, their collective memory, their interwoven destinies. Visualize a tapestry being woven thread by thread, color by color, each thread representing a person, a family, a community, interwoven to create a larger, more intricate design, a nation. The threads, while distinct, are inseparable, contributing to the overall pattern. Focus on the texture of the tapestry, the rough feel of the wool, the smoothness of the silk, the intricate interweaving of the threads. The 19th century witnessed the rise of nationalism, a powerful force that reshaped the political landscape of the world. Imagine the fervor of a crowd gathered in a public square, their voices rising in unison, singing patriotic songs, waving flags. See the vibrant colors of the flags, the passionate expressions on the faces of the people. Feel the energy of the crowd. These were not just subjects of a king or an emperor, but citizens of a nation, bound together by a shared sense of belonging, a shared destiny. This collective identity became intertwined with territory, creating the concept of national borders. Consider the Congress of Vienna, convened in 1814 after the Napoleonic Wars. Imagine the grand halls of Vienna, filled with diplomats from across Europe redrawing the map of the continent, attempting to restore order after decades of upheaval. Hear the murmur of conversations in different languages, the rustle of official documents, the scratching of quill pens. The Congress of Vienna sought to create a balance of power, to prevent future conflicts by establishing clear boundaries between nations. However, these boundaries often disregarded existing ethnic and cultural divisions, sowing the seeds of future tensions. Focus on the maps spread out on the tables, the intricate lines delineating the boundaries of nations, the careful annotations marking strategic location. The 19th and 20th centuries were marked by the rise of self-determination movements, driven by the desire of people to govern themselves, to determine their own destiny. Imagine the hushed meetings of revolutionaries, plotting in secret, their faces illuminated by candlelight. Hear the whispered discussions, the fervent pronouncements, the shared dreams of freedom and independence. These movements challenged existing empires, demanding the right to create their own nation-states, to draw their own borders. The struggle for self-determination was often long and arduous, marked by conflict and sacrifice. The concept of national borders became increasingly complex, encompassing not just physical territory, but also cultural, linguistic, and historical factors. Imagine a border crossing, a checkpoint between two countries. See the passport control booths, the customs officials, the long lines of people waiting to cross. Hear the stamping of passports, the rumble of trucks, the murmur of conversations in different languages. These borders, while seemingly concrete and fixed, are also permeable, crossed by people, goods, and ideas. The rise of nationalism in the nation-state led to both positive and negative consequences. It fostered a sense of unity and belonging, allowing people to identify with a larger community, to work together for common goals. Imagine a community gathering, people from different backgrounds coming together to celebrate a national holiday. Hear the laughter of children, the music of a local band, the sharing of food and stories. However, nationalism could also lead to exclusion, discrimination, and conflict, as different groups competed for resources and power. Imagine the chilling silence before a battle, the tension in the air, the fear in the eyes of the soldiers. Hear the distant rumble of cannons, the cries of the wounded, the lamentations of the bereaved. The 20th century witnessed the devastating consequences of extreme nationalism culminating in 2 world wars. Imagine the bombed-out cities, the ravaged landscapes, the millions of lives lost. Hear the wail of sirens, the explosions of bombs, the cries of grief and despair. These conflicts underscored the dangers of unchecked nationalism, the devastating consequences of prioritizing national interests over human lives. Focus on the silence that follows the storm, the eerie stillness of a battlefield, the ghostly remnants of a once vibrant city. As you drift further into sleep, let the images of flags and borders, of conflict and celebration slowly fade. Focus on the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the slow, steady beat of your heart. The world outside, with its complex and ever-shifting boundaries, now recedes into the background, replaced by a sense of inner peace and tranquility. The lines on the map, once so sharply defined, now soften and blur, dissolving into the darkness. Remember, these boundaries, while seemingly fixed and immutable, are ultimately fluid, constantly being reshaped by the forces of history, by the ebb and flow of human ambition, by the enduring search for belonging, for identity, for home. And as you sink deeper into slumber, let the echoes of these historical narratives, these explorations of human experience, lull you into a state of deep, restful sleep. The silence that followed the storm, the eerie stillness of a battlefield, the ghostly remnants of a once vibrant city, these are the echoes of conflict, the reminders of the fragility of peace. But from the ashes of war, new boundaries emerge, sometimes drawn not with ink and treaties, but with ideology. Imagine the world split in two, not by oceans or mountain ranges, but by an invisible curtain of ideas, of opposing political systems. This is the landscape of the Cold War, a period of ideological struggle that reshaped the map of the world, not through conquest, but through the power of belief. Feel the chill of the Cold War descend, a different kind of conflict, a war of nerves, a war of ideologies. See the stark contrast between East and West, between communism and capitalism, two opposing forces vying for global dominance. This ideological divide manifested in physical barriers, in concrete walls and barbed wire fences, but also in the hearts and minds of people. The Berlin Wall stands as a potent symbol of this era, a concrete manifestation of the Iron Curtain that divided Europe, and indeed the world. Picture Berlin, a city divided. Imagine the construction of the wall, brick by brick, a physical barrier rising in the heart of a once unified city. Hear the clang of hammers, the grinding of machinery, the shouts of workers. This wall was more than just concrete and steel. It represented a stark division between two worlds, two ideologies. Families were separated, friends divided, a city torn asunder. Focus on a single family, divided by the wall. Imagine their last meeting before the wall was built. The hurried goodbyes, the unspoken fear in their eyes. Hear the cracking voices, the whispered promises, the shared tears. Now, imagine them standing on opposite sides of the wall, yearning to be reunited, their hopes and dreams entangled in the barbed wire. Feel the tension along the border, the watchful eyes of guards and towers, the searchlights sweeping across the no-man's land. Hear the barking of guard dogs, the crackle of radios, the ominous silence punctuated by the occasional distant siren. This was a border unlike any other, a border that represented not just a division of territory, but a division of ideas, of ways of life. The Iron Curtain extended beyond Berlin. Visualize a map of Europe bisected by this invisible line separating east from west. See the different colors on the map representing the different political alignments, the different spheres of influence. This ideological divide impacted not only Europe but also countries across the globe, fueling proxy wars, shaping international relations, and influencing the lives of billions. Imagine a classroom in a country aligned with the Soviet Union. See the students in their uniforms, the portraits of communist leaders on the walls, the textbooks promoting a specific ideology. Hear the recitation of slogans, the singing of patriotic songs, the indoctrination of young minds. Now imagine a classroom in a Western country, the students engaged in open discussion, the emphasis on individual freedom and democratic values. Hear the lively debates, the questioning of authority, the encouragement of critical thinking. These contrasting educational systems reflect the broader ideological divide that shaped the world during the Cold War. Consider the propaganda posters, the radio broadcasts, the newsreels, all designed to reinforce ideological beliefs, to demonize the other side. See the bold colors, the stylized images, the carefully crafted messages. Hear the persuasive voices, the stirring music, the emotional appeals. These were the tools of the Cold War, the weapons of a propaganda battle fought in the hearts and minds of people. The Cold War was a time of fear and uncertainty, a time of nuclear brinkmanship, a time when the world seemed poised on the edge of annihilation. Imagine the tense negotiations between superpowers, the back-channel communications, the ever-present threat of nuclear war. Hear the hushed whispers in dimly lit rooms, the clicking of teletype machines, the urgent phone calls in the middle of the night. The fate of the world hung in the balance, dependent on the decisions of a few powerful individuals. Despite the stark divisions, the Cold War era also witnessed moments of hope, of cultural exchange, of people-to-people connections that transcended ideological barriers. Imagine a cultural exchange program, students from East and West meeting for the first time, sharing their experiences, discovering their common humanity. Hear the hesitant conversations, the gradual building of trust, the realization that despite their differences, they shared common hopes and dreams. These small acts of connection, these glimpses of understanding, offered a glimmer of hope in a world divided. Focus now on the crumbling of the Berlin Wall, the symbolic dismantling of the Iron Curtain. Imagine the crowds gathering at the wall, chipping away at the concrete, celebrating the reunification of a city, a country, a continent. Hear the cheers of the crowd, the hammering of chisels, the joyful cries of reunification. This was a moment of profound historical significance, a testament to the human desire for freedom, for connection, for unity. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of an era, the beginning of a new world order. As the concrete barriers crumbled, so too did the rigid ideological boundaries that had defined the latter half of the 20th century. The world, once divided, began to reconnect, to rebuild, to reimagine itself. And as you drift further into sleep, let the images of walls and barbed wire, of propaganda posters and nuclear threats, slowly fade, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the slow, steady beat of your heart. A new world order, a world where the very definition of borders began to shift, to blur, to become something far more complex than lines on a map. Imagine a world map, not with starkly defined political boundaries, but with overlapping networks, interconnected systems, flows of information and capital crisscrossing continents. See the lines blurring, the colors blending, the world becoming increasingly interconnected. Hear the hum of global communication networks, the constant flow of data, the multilingual conversations taking place across time zones. This interconnectedness, this globalization, began to challenge traditional notions of borders, of sovereignty, of national identity. Picture a bustling port city, ships from all corners of the globe docking, unloading goods, exchanging cultures. See the colorful containers stacked high on the docks, each one carrying a piece of a globalized world. Hear the multilingual chatter of dock workers, the clang of machinery, the sounds of a global marketplace. Imagine the goods being transported inland, carried by trucks, trains, and airplanes, reaching consumers in distant lands. See the products on store shelves labeled with "Made in" tags from various countries, reflecting the interconnectedness of global supply chains. Hear the rustle of shopping bags, the beeping of checkout scanners, the sounds of a globalized consumer culture. Consider the flow of information, the instantaneous communication enabled by the internet. See the glow of computer screens, the flashing of mobile phones, the constant stream of information connecting people across the globe. Hear the clicking of keyboards, the ringing of notifications, the sounds of a world connected in real time. Imagine people from different countries collaborating on projects, sharing ideas, building virtual communities. Hear the multilingual discussions in online forums, the exchange of knowledge in virtual classrooms, the building of relationships across borders. This digital interconnectedness is reshaping our understanding of borders, creating virtual spaces where physical boundaries become less relevant. Focus on the rise of supranational organizations like the European Union. Visualize a map of Europe, with the borders between member states becoming increasingly permeable. See the free movement of people, goods, and services across national boundaries. Hear the multilingual conversations in European Parliament sessions, the negotiations and compromises that shape EU policy. The creation of a shared European identity. Imagine citizens of different European countries living and working in each other's countries, sharing cultures, building a sense of European community. Hear the laughter of children playing in multilingual playgrounds, the conversations in cafes and restaurants, the sounds of a shared European experience. The concept of open borders, while still debated, reflects this changing understanding of borders. Imagine a world without border checkpoints, without passport controls, without the restrictions on movement that have defined human history for centuries. See the free flow of people across continents, the exchange of cultures and ideas, the creation of a truly global community. Hear the multilingual conversations in bustling city streets, the sharing of stories and experiences, the sounds of a world without borders. However, this increasing interconnectedness also brings its own challenges. Imagine the debates about migration, about the integration of different cultures, about the impact of globalization on local communities. Here are the passionate voices arguing for and against open borders, the discussions about national identity in a globalized world, the search for a balance between global interconnectedness and local autonomy. See the protests and demonstrations, the political debates, the ongoing struggle to define the role of borders in a rapidly changing world. Consider the economic interdependence of nations, the global supply chains that link economies together. Imagine a disruption in these supply chains, a natural disaster, a political conflict, or a pandemic that impacts one part of the world and ripples across the globe. See the empty shelves in stores, the closed factories, the economic hardship caused by interconnectedness. Hear the worried whispers in boardrooms, the news reports of economic downturns, the anxieties about the fragility of a globalized world. The rise of nationalism and populism in some parts of the world represents a reaction to this globalization, a desire to reassert national identities, to reinforce borders. Imagine the political rallies, the speeches emphasizing national interests, the calls for stricter border controls. Hear the chanting of slogans, the waving of flags, the resurgence of nationalistic sentiments. See the construction of new walls and fences, the tightening of immigration policies, the attempts to redraw boundaries in a world that is increasingly interconnected. As you drift further into sleep, let these complex and often contradictory images of globalization and blurred lines slowly fade. Focus on the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the slow, steady beat of your heart. Let the sounds of the world, the hum of global communication networks, the multilingual conversations, the debates and discussions gradually recede into the background. Imagine a quiet, peaceful space, a place where borders have no meaning, where interconnectedness is not a source of anxiety, but a source of comfort. Let the complexities of the world gently drift away, replaced by the simple, soothing sensation of sleep. Feel the gentle slowing of your thoughts, the easing of anxieties, the quiet settling of the mind as we turn towards the future, a future of frontiers unlike any we have known before. Imagine the shimmering, intangible lines of the digital world, the flow of data packets across oceans and continents, connecting billions of minds in a vast interconnected network. Hear the quiet hum of servers, the clicking of keys, the soft glow of screens illuminating faces in the darkness. This digital realm, a world without physical borders, transcends the traditional limitations of geography, allowing for instantaneous communication, the sharing of ideas, and the creation of virtual communities that span the globe. See the rise of virtual economies, cryptocurrencies flowing through digital arteries, transcending national boundaries and challenging traditional financial systems. Hear the murmurs of online marketplaces, the clicking of mouse buttons confirming transactions, the silent transfer of value across continents. Imagine digital nomads, working remotely from anywhere in the world, their physical location becoming less relevant as they navigate the borderless landscape of the internet. Hear the gentle tapping of laptop keyboards in cafes, on beaches, in mountain cabins, the sounds of a workforce unbound by traditional geographical constraints. Now shift your focus to the physical world, a world grappling with the changing climate, the rising sea levels, the shifting weather patterns. See the melting glaciers, the encroaching deserts, the increasingly frequent extreme weather events. Hear the crackle of wildfires, the roar of floodwaters, the howling winds of intensifying storms. Imagine the displacement of populations, the migration of climate refugees seeking safer ground, challenging existing borders and creating new pressures on nations. Hear the hushed whispers of displaced communities, the rustling of makeshift shelters, the quiet resilience of those adapting to a changing world. Consider the shifting sands of global power, the rise of new economic and political forces, the reconfiguration of alliances and rivalries. See the maps of influence being redrawn, the negotiations and agreements being forged, the subtle shifts in the global balance of power. Hear the multilingual discussions in diplomatic meetings, the signing of treaties, the quiet maneuvering of nations on the world stage. Imagine the changing dynamics of international relations, the new challenges and opportunities presented by a multipolar world. Hear the quiet murmur of global conversations, the ebb and flow of international cooperation and competition. Focus now on the concept of identity in this interconnected world, the blending of cultures, the blurring of traditional distinctions. See the vibrant tapestry of human experience, the interwoven threads of different cultures, languages, and traditions. Hear the multilingual chatter in cosmopolitan cities, the music of diverse cultures blending together, the sharing of culinary traditions from around the world. Imagine the evolving sense of belonging, the multiple identities that individuals can hold, the interconnectedness of human experience. Hear the laughter of children playing in multilingual playgrounds, the conversations in cafes and restaurants, the sounds of a world where cultures intersect and blend. Consider the ethical implications of artificial intelligence, the growing influence of algorithms on our lives, the questions of privacy and security in a digitally interconnected world. See the glow of computer screens displaying complex algorithms, the rapid processing of data, the increasing automation of tasks. Here, the whirring of computer fans, the clicking of relays, the silent workings of artificial intelligence. Imagine the potential benefits and risks of this technology, the ethical dilemmas it presents, the challenges of regulating a technology that transcends national borders. Hear the quiet debates in academic circles, the discussions in government policy meetings, the ongoing efforts to navigate the ethical landscape of the digital age. Now let your mind drift towards the concept of space, the final frontier. Imagine the vastness of the cosmos, the distant stars, the planets beyond our solar system. See the swirling nebulae, the distant galaxies, the infinite expanse of the universe. Hear the silence of space, the subtle hum of spacecraft, the crackling of radio transmissions from distant probes. Imagine the possibility of human exploration and colonization of other planets, the establishment of new societies beyond Earth, the creation of new frontiers in the vastness of space. Hear the whispers of future generations, the dreams of reaching for the stars, the quiet anticipation of what lies beyond. As you drift further into sleep, let these images of the future, the interconnected world, the challenges and opportunities it presents, slowly fade. Focus on the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the slow, steady beat of your heart. Let the sounds of the world, the hum of digital networks, the murmurs of global conversations, the whispers of future possibilities, gradually recede into the background. Imagine a quiet, peaceful space, a place where borders have no meaning, where interconnectedness is not a source of anxiety but a source of comfort. Let the complexities of the future gently drift away, replaced by the simple, soothing sensation of sleep. Let the future unfold in its own time, while you rest, restore, and prepare for the dawn of a new day